this little video about how to reach that final level of soloing mastery. When I was starting out, I was practicing all my skills all the time. The techniques, the scales, the fingering, the picking, everything, right? And I was expecting all of that to come together, like collecting all the ingredients of a cake, throwing them together, and then expecting to see the cake being baked. But it never was baked because I was not baking it. And that's the first point of this video, is that we expect those skills to come together, and we see jam track practicing as an activity of just having fun, basically. We're just practicing soloing, but we don't really know what we're doing there. And what I was doing was I was shooting myself in the foot all the time, because I was really trying to do more than what I could actually do. See, if you compare this whole area to soccer or football or any other sports activity, what do when you want to become good at that? Well, first of all, you don't walk onto the playing field playing a top match without having some skills, right? If you can't hit the ball and expect it to end up in a approximate place of your decision, then you don't want to play, right? Because you're not making any difference for the team other than you're really pulling them down. So that's the first thing. Of course it is. We want to go into the lab, practice some skills that we can then walk onto the playing field with. But it doesn't end there, because if we don't practice playing, if we don't practice using the skills, then we won't really become good at them. All we have is some show-off skills that we can show to people when we're not in an actual match, in an actual game. Because what happens when the game starts? Well, opponents show up. People are trying to keep you from scoring. And the same thing goes for when you're meeting with the guys or to practice, or you are on stage, for instance. Then suddenly you're nervous and you feel pressured to do something good, and you have that beat in the background. You have those 16 bars or 32 bars, and you have to perform right then and there. You cannot change it. It's one take. It's right now. And perhaps people are even recording it. So it's a totally different game. And you know that if you've been trying it, practicing. And I remember I've been practicing so much at the time. So when I was, playing with the guys, I was standing up suddenly. I couldn't see the freaking fretboard, and everything was different. So what you really need to do, first of all, is to look at how much of the practice time would you spend on the playing field, and how much of your time would you spend practicing your skills. Just ask yourself that, and then look at guitar practice. How much of your time are you practicing the skills of soloing, and how much of your time are you using just, playing up against jam tracks, right? And so see if that ratio is totally out of place, then you might want to change some things. I was out, soloing with a rock band. And what happened was I was constantly trying to use skills, do things that I couldn't really do, that I didn't really master. And so when I got nervous, when other people were looking, when I was playing with the band, when I had those 16 bars of just performance right now, my solos were awful, or at least I thought so. So every time I played a solo, I was failing. So it created an association within me that, soloing equals pain. It's really painful to solo because I fail every single time. And what you need to really master soloing is to step out of that and say, okay, what would you do if you were in a football match or a soccer match? Would you use all the skills that you've been practicing, outside of the game? No, you wouldn't. You would instantly, because of the pressure of the opponents, you would use those core basic fundamental skills of just kicking the ball in an approximate direction and pushing people with your shoulder. You wouldn't do any fancy stuff with your legs and try to do all kinds of advanced stuff, right? You would just stick to what works, right? Isn't that true? The same thing goes for practicing guitar, that if you start practicing with jam tracks, which is what I recommend for this video, if you lay it upon yourself to focus on creating workable solos when you practice. So instead of having this freedom of just playing crap, basically, when you solo over a jam track, instead, demand of yourself that you play something that could actually pass as a workable solo on an album. Okay? Because what happens then in your brain is that you suddenly start choosing, like in a football match, you start choosing things that you are certain that you can do. So you start choosing scale shapes that you're certain you can use. You start using techniques of which you are certain. If you are focusing on what you can actually do, and you're focused on, okay, let's say there's an audience now, and I have to produce a solo, that's practicing soloing. Let's just compare that to practicing soccer again. When you're practicing soccer or football or basketball or baseball or whatever it is, then what you are focusing on is winning. But you don't have the big consequences of losing the whole tournament because you're playing guys for fun, right? Or just for the practice of it. But you would never go in and try all kinds of, moves and fancy stuff while you're trying to win the game. People on your team would go, "What are you doing? Would you stop that?" Right? So you instinctively, you would focus on what you can actually do. Please get this. As you practice these skills and you focus on really using stuff that you can do, you follow the rhythm, you are with the music, instead of blah, 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 using all the freedom you have of not having an audience and not having people to play with that are going to say, "What is it? What are you doing there? It sounds awful." Then what happens is you keep in that little zone of what you can do, and then you start expanding it as you actually gain control of what you can actually do by focusing on it. Then what you can actually do just expands automatically. If you keep practicing over here, you practice your scale shapes, you practice your sequences, you practice licks and vibrato and sliding and all kinds of stuff. And then over here, what automatically happens is that you're going to use more and more of what you practice over here. If you stay within that zone of what you can actually do. And what happens to most people is that they start doing this, and then it sounds boring and simple, and then they stop doing it and go on to something else. So what I need you to do, because that's not for you, what I need you to do is to have the courage to stay in that zone of what you can really do, and then develop that into something interesting. That's a challenge. Taking 3 or 4 notes or 5 notes of the pentatonic scale and very limited technique and very limited speed, and actually making something of that, and actually entertaining the audience with that is really a challenge. And then you can add all other kinds of stuff on top of that. But if you cannot do that, if you cannot entertain people with 5 notes and limited technique, like, for instance, B.B. King and a ton of other high-profile players who are really skilled at what they do, if you cannot really have fun with the skill level you have now, then there's no chance that you're going to have fun with the skills that you're going to build tomorrow. So the second you know the first position, pentatonic scale, you have some rhythm, you can do 8th notes, you have control over those, so you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so on, and use all those beats and mix them up, and you can mix up the notes. Then you have to start using that every single day with a jam track in the background, right? And then you can build from there. And that's what we fail to see. And please remember this analogy of the football or soccer game and really think about point 1, do I need to change how much I use jam tracks and really try to focus on playing an actual game of simulating the situation where there's an audience and really, bam, play a solo with what I have? Do I need to change the ratio of playing techniques and practicing all these kinds of elements of soloing? And do I need to do this more compared to what you would do if you were practicing soccer? Please, you're the judge of that. And secondly, do I have the courage to focus on what I can really do and to create that situation and start practicing with the tools I have already, instead of being that soccer player who just keeps on practicing all kinds of flashy stuff, but he's never actually able to produce results in a real match with real people? So you can take these 2 insights right away and produce some new and very radical results. I promise you. If you start point 1 looking at how much time do you spend in an actual playing situation, actually playing soccer or football, actually trying to produce a real result, making a difference for the people you play with, and really producing a real solo that sounds really cool. Or are you using jam track practicing as kind of a fun way to just try out all kinds of stuff as the music play in the background? Or are you really practicing? Look at how much you use jam track practice, and then look at how are you actually using it. And if you start focusing in the right way when you do this, and you might want to watch this video once more to get that just all straight. If you start doing that and you do it every single day, you'll really discover how your ability to play real solos that really work in an actual playing situation with an audience, that whole game changes very quickly. If you want to look more into this and deeper into this and use advanced scales and arpeggios in record time by really boiling down what it is that we're doing here, I recommend that you look into my new program called The Soloing Supremacy on my website, klauslevin.com. in there, I've distilled all the little insights that I got in this period of my development, where I really started focusing on this and got some real radical results. And I've distilled that into a specific practice routine. And I give you a bunch of different jam tracks, examples, and we practice playing over multiple chords. We practice using all kinds of tools, but in a way where we can actually do it, instead of relying on stuff that we cannot do and trying to apply it in a real situation. So I hope you look into that. If you don't, I'll just see you in another free video.